Welcome to NAIFA's Advisor Today podcast series, where we focus on how financial advisors work, live, and give to their local communities and our greater financial services industry. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hi, everyone. This is Chris Gandy, your co-host of Advisor Today's podcast, where we feature the top leaders in the insurance and financial services industry with our beautiful co-host, Suzanne Carawan. Welcome, Suzanne. We are super excited today for another episode of Advisor Today, where we interview advisors to understand what they're doing at work and life and how they're giving back to society. Previous guests include past President Tom Michael, Yat of the Year, Brian Haney, and numerous others that you'll hear from and leaders in the industry. Suzanne, would you take it away and feature our sponsor?
Sure. Today's sponsor is actually NAIFA's National Leadership Conference that's upcoming November 13th through 15th. We thought we'd take a pause to talk about volunteer leadership because our guest speaker today has a lot of that under his belt, and we want to tap into that. But it's also a call to action for all of you out there. If you're not a member of NAIFA, please join. Go to naifa.org/join, and hopefully Brian can help you convince you why that is if you're not already a member. And if you are a member, it might be a time to really start to do a little soul searching and saying, are you giving back to your professional association? Volunteer leadership is something that only NAIFA has at these national, state, and local levels. We have over 1,500 leaders nationally, and we come together every year in Washington, D.C. to celebrate our top leaders through membership awards, a gala celebration, and additional time for thought leadership. With that, we hope to see you again at National Leadership Conference, November 13th through 15th. You can check it out at belong.naifa.org/NLC. Back to you, Chris.
Thank you, Suzanne. Today, we're very fortunate to have one of the legends of the game, Mr. Brian Ashe. Brian Ashe, a little bit on his bio, is the president of Ashe and Associates. He holds a CLU and LACP. Has been a NAIFA member for 51 years and also an MDRT member for 51 years. He has been in the insurance and investment business since 1969, assisting clients with life, health, disability, annuity, and equity products. His work is concentrated in estate conservation, retirement planning, employee benefits, and business insurance strategies. Brian has been on the board of Life Happens, past president of MDRT, past president of the Chicago Chapter of Society of Financial Services Professionals, and has 15 core to the table honors and 4 top of the table honors with MDRT. With no further ado, welcome Mr. Brian Ashe. Brian, good to see you.
Good to see you too, Chris. Thanks for having me.
All right. One of the things we like to do here is just kind of, ask you some questions about your journey, to learn more about you, the value that you bring to the industry, and ultimately ways in which others can learn from your experience or your opportunity. So, Brian, to get started, how did you get started in the business? I mean, you didn't start last week, but you've got some experience. So Brian, share with us, how did you get started? How did you get into the business?
Well, when I graduated from college, I went to the University of Illinois in Chicago, and I had worked all the way through college. I'm the oldest of 10 kids, so I had to work to pay for school. And when I graduated from college, I wanted to stay in the Chicago area. I wasn't really interested in relocating someplace. And I did a little bit of work with the Chicago Tribune. I wrote some advertising, radio and TV, newspaper advertising for them. And then I really wanted to get into the sales area. And it seemed like the financial services profession offered more of a chance to be really reimbursed based upon individual effort, that your financial future, your career future was not going to be based so much on the decisions that other people were making, but more of the decisions and effort that you were willing to put in yourself. My next door neighbor happened to be in the life insurance business with the old home life insurance company. And he was working with an organization called Physicians Planning Service Corporation. And he said, based upon your background and some of the things I was doing then, he said, I think you would do well in our business. And I started working with the home life insurance company. And based upon the association they had with Physicians Planning Service Corporation, really started early in my career, Chris, to concentrate on the medical marketplace. And over the years, developed probably about 600 physicians as clients, along with a lot of other clients in the regular commercial pursuits. But my initial concentration was on young physicians. And I spent a lot of my early years standing in hospitals, calling doctors to see if I could get 15 or 20 minutes of their time to help them and let them know what we did.
That's interesting, Brian. You've had a quite a journey. Share with us a little bit about life happens. For those who are new to NAIFA and your journey with life happens, can you share with us a little bit about why that was part of your journey and what life happens? What is it and how advisors can utilize it?
Sure. Well, from a historical standpoint, if you went back to, let's say, the mid 80s, the life insurance business was beginning to get a bad reputation because of the universal life policies that had been sold in a very high interest environment that began to collapse somewhat as the interest rates began to drop. And the regulators, the lay press, just about everybody was saying bad things about life insurance companies, life insurance products, and the people who sold them. And there was essentially no organization that could provide an effective response to that negativity. So 6 companies had gone under, including Executive Life and Mutual Benefit Life. Mutual Benefit had been around for 120 years. So it was really, really bad. And if you were selling back then, you never really got a very positive reception. And so the companies came together in 1994 and under the leadership of Dave Woods, who was now past president of NAIFA, decided that they were going to throw some money together to try to provide some messaging and communications that would be good for the industry to educate the buying public about the value of life insurance and the value of professional advice. So they started something called the Life and Health Insurance Foundation for Education. The acronym was LIFE. And in 1995, they started coming out with both radio and television ads, which our industry had never, ever done before, that were very dramatic and began to move that needle forward to a very positive reaction to the products and the people who sold them. They renamed the organization Life Happens at a point later, but they started something called Real Life Stories. And the real life stories were very dramatic, and they were from the perspective of the individual who purchased the product to help save, protect his or her business, or protect his or her family, disability to replace income, later on some long-term care for as people began to age. And I was overjoyed that Dave and the companies had put together this program. They started off with almost $10 million worth of funding, which was a lot of money back in 1995. And when I finished my service on the executive committee of the $1 Million Roundtable, I was asked to serve on the board of Life Happens, which I did, and later was asked to chair Life Happens in 2005. And then I stayed on as treasurer, and then I became executive vice president. I wound up having 18 years of work with Life Happens. So it was very much a labor of love, because I felt there was a great need for educating the public, being kind of like the public relations arm of the life insurance business.
So one thing I want to know, Brian, is because you have sat at the executive level of Life as well as MDRT for such a incredible span, when technology has come in and really disrupted everything and changed the whole business. And of course, we just had that pandemic and whatnot. But overall, the course of what you've seen, can you give us some thoughts there on what's changed that you've seen in the industry, and what really you see is coming, right? What hasn't changed, what stayed the same? I think it'd be nice to get some thoughts there on both the advisor side, the consumer side. What's your take on that?
Well, certainly, Suzanne, from the advisor side, I think NAIFA, and to a certain extent the $1 Million Roundtable too, at least domestically, has experienced a lessened interest in participating in voluntarism from financial service professionals. I'm not exactly sure what the genesis of that decrease in participation was, but $1 Million Roundtable membership in the United States has remained relatively flat over the past 15 years or so. Back in 1999, just before the millennial change, there were about 144,000 members of NAIFA. The society has experienced that. Gamma, I think, all of the associations have experienced a downturn in membership. And I'm not exactly sure what the cause is, but I think that it has had long-term negative effects, because associations give you as an individual power that you don't have as an individual, because you are with like-minded people who can help move the needle on things like Life Happens, the perception of our business and education, and certainly in the areas that NAIFA is so strong in legislatively at both the state and the national level. I served as the legislative chair for Illinois back in the mid-90s as well. And I can tell you that when we had the opportunity to meet with legislators, which we did every year, and kind of bullet point the issues, Illinois got like 5,000 bills that went through the legislature every year. There's no way that those folks could have a good understanding of what they were passing until we were there. So there's been a drop off. I don't know exactly why. Sometimes there's been, I think, a little bit of a moving off of messaging from the planning standpoint, where life insurance has been kind of secondary. And of course, that's one of the lead products for people like NAIFA and the $1 Million Roundtable. The investment scene has become much more exciting. People know more about beta and Sharpe ratios than they do about what's the average age that a widow dies. And consequently, I think we've struggled over the past several years. Going forward, they're predicting that in the next 10 years or so, we'll probably have 30 to 40% fewer advisors than we have now. People like me who used to have dark hair are now, looking like they could be the centerfold for Q-Tip magazine. And we need to have young advisors in the future who are not only skilled at dealing with the investment side of the ledger, but also the foundational things for life insurance, health insurance, disability insurance, and long-term care insurance. And I frankly, from my perspective of doing this for as long as I have, find it difficult to believe that any financial plan can really do the job that it's supposed to do if the foundational products of life, health, disability, long-term care are not taken care of first. I don't know how you could consider yourself a financial professional without addressing some of those issues. So that will be a challenge in the future. And of course, one of the reasons that I think our association should be so strong is, I think, demonstrated just by looking at the compliance issues that we have to deal with on a daily basis. We have to be able to talk to legislators and regulators about what can work and what can't work in servicing the public. 40% of the adults in this country own no life insurance. That we have problems with people putting enough money away into their 401ks and their IRAs. If we are tremendously burdened by regulation, that will continue. And the only way that can be modified is by having strong association participation. The old Stephen Covey line still works today. And that is, no involvement, no commitment. And I think that should be kind of the guideline for everybody on their voluntarism. No involvement, no committed. If you're truly committed to your business, if you want to make a difference to yourself, to your company, and to the people that you're serving, you need to be involved. And that means taking some time, showing up at meetings, agreeing to serve on committees, and so forth.
So, Brian, you mentioned something as an advisor. I'm not quite, as long in the tooth as you are currently, but we hope we can be in the business as long as you've been able to be in the business. But I think you said something very interesting that I think people need to hear, is that you mentioned commitment, right? And there's a difference between a commitment and an interest, and the difference is convenience. As I think that for a long period of time, let's say you've been in the business. You were in the business when I think I was in high school. I know for sure. I mean, based on the background, right? I mean, you've been in the business literally twice as long as me. And so when we stop to think about it, when I came into the business, we just kind of compare the generations. When I came into the business, when you came into the business, it was the debit business, right? It was a completely different business than it is when I came into business.
Coming out of the debit business, but that was certainly a vestige that was relatively.
Absolutely. There was more companies. There was more opportunity. When I came into the business, it was more around, this is the cool club to be in, right? Because all the major opportunities that existed for the barrier to entry into the financial space went through the insurance industry. The Northwestern Mutuals of the world, the New York Lifes of the world, the large career companies were the ones that were putting time, energy, and effort into kind of that mentor and development phase. Very much so, right? So I believe what's happened in my observation, just during my timeline of being in the business and a committed person, is that I feel like, from my perspective, we've seen a change in the industry that has gone super fast. However, our industry itself has not yet changed the way we bring people into the business, right? So, Brian, when we came into the business, when I started, I said, do the project 200. You remember that? I said, your 200 closest friends. But we live in a world now where, you're right, the world of financial services and financial planning is more attractive, quote unquote, in the market space as a marketing tool than the necessary principles of what it takes to build a successful portfolio. I'll give you an example. I played sports. Everybody wants to see somebody dunk a basketball. Everybody. It's like the crowd goes crazy, right? No one wants to see someone make free throws, shoot free throws.
Chris, that was always a challenge for me.
But that's what it was, right? Everybody. But it's the same 2 points. Right? If I score free throws, it's the same 2 points as if I dunk a basketball. Why do we get completely different responses? So I think you hit on something, the commitment and the interest, and I think evolving and being a part and committed, volunteering into the interest. I think as the industry grows, you're right. We've got to figure out collectively, if we put down the barriers between the societies and the organizations and the companies, we've got to figure out how to get more people in the business, building it the right way, right? Committed to the risk side as much as they're committed to the investment side, because that's a holistic approach. And I think you've obviously, through your work, you've done that. And you hit an amazing point. Tell me, what's been your biggest challenge? I mean, so MDRT, obviously you've done that, and then you've done top of the table, you've done core of the table. We don't need to go through. I mean, you know that your accolades are fantastic during your career. What's been the hardest part about accomplishing those things? What's been the hardest part about doing it and doing it consistently?
Prospecting. It sounds like that. Well, that's overly simple, but honestly, Chris, if you listen to Joe Jordan, Joe says our business is based upon two columns: prospecting and everything else. And it's so true.
Sure.
You and I could be the smartest advisors in our agency. We could be the smartest advisors in the country. We could have a company that has the absolute pinnacle of reputation. But if we got nobody to talk to, nothing's going to happen. And there's an old saying that, nothing happens until somebody sells something.
Right.
And so getting activity, to me, that was always a focus. For years, the roundtable would give out a special ribbon if you did 150 lives. I concentrated on doing 150 lives. Sometimes it was life insurance, sometimes it was disability, in a combination. I mean, I know companies right now that you could have 2/3 of their advisors who don't do 10 life insurance applications in a year.
Correct.
Not 50. So it sounds a little bit simplistic to say prospecting, but that was always a challenge for me. And my answer was to try to get out in front of as many people as possible. That gave me the opportunity to talk not only about the life insurance, but the IRA, the 401k, the estate planning, and so forth. So having some concentration on the importance of those foundational issues and going out and having people talk about it. And I think as well as I do, that if you can be successful talking about the foundational issues, which aren't quite as exciting as dunking the basketball, it makes it a heck of a lot easier to talk to them about their investment planning, or whether or not they're exposed to the federal or the state inheritance taxes, because you've overcome that barrier. So finding good questions, involving people, having a concentration on seeing lots of people to tell the story was always a challenge for me. And I think it's a challenge for most advisors today.
Talk to me about, you've held the flag for NAIFA. You've held the flag. You've volunteered your time. You're committed to the work that you do. What's your proudest moment? I mean, could you put a star on that and say, okay, this is a pretty proud moment for me. What would you say has been your proudest moment along the journey?
Well, I guess if I were to pick out one thing, I had a lot of involvement. I served on 34 committees with the $1 Million Roundtable. I tried to speak probably almost twice a month for NAIFA for about 20 years. I served with the society. And the only reason I'm going through these things is not to say, oh, look, all the stuff that he did. But it was kind of like a coming together of all of those things in 2012 when my peers elected to give me the John Newton Russell Award. If I were to say that was the proudest moment in the business, it was being given the John Newton Russell Award in 2012, because of the company that I was in, of the prior leaders who had done so much, given so much of themselves, that that my peers thought that I could be considered in the same circle with them. And, it touched upon for people to even suggest your name, the Society, the Roundtable, Gamma, NAIFA. So it was the aggregation of all of the organizations that I had tried to offer some assistance to from a volunteer standpoint that kind of culminated in that. And I would say that, there've not been too many people since 1945 that have received that award. And so I would say it was a very proud moment. Had nothing to do about how much money I made or being feted for something. It was more saying, hey, you know what? We appreciate you. We appreciate your commitment. Hopefully it serves as an example for other people to give back to an organization that gave so much to me. I listened to the podcast that you had with Brian Haney, and he was talking about paying back, and certainly I started my 54th year in the business, August 1st. I got a lot of payback to offer, and the successes I've had have generally been because I'm a really good thief. I steal ideas from everybody that I can talk to. I wish I could have some really interesting original ideas, but most of it has come from listening and paying attention to and rubbing elbows with people who felt as committed as I did and really wanted to make a difference. So it kind of culminated with the John Newton Russell Award.
What about mentors? I'm going to put you up there on the Mount Rushmore of life insurance. I'm going to put you up there. Who would you say is your mentor? And then what is it that you learned from them that just was so powerful? What would you say that would? Or you can do numerous ones, so just pick one.
Yeah, let me see if I can answer that from two perspectives, because I was involved in putting together the mentoring program for the $1 Million Roundtable in the 1990s. There had been a couple of attempts before that by other people, so it wasn't all my idea. But we kind of finally got it all together and launched it in the mid 90s, and got some of the big companies to go along with putting people through that program. And I think to date, I know a couple of years ago there were like 8,000 people who had been through that mentoring program, and it's still continuing to this day. Certainly, I would. If I had to pick one person, I think it probably would have been Dave Hilton. Dave Hilton was a Northwestern Mutual agent. Mm-hmm. He was a president of the $1 Million Roundtable. He was a CPA by training. He was just, he was kind of like the Renaissance man. He knew art, he knew music, he knew numbers. He was a tremendous family person, absolutely committed to the business, and unfortunately died early. He was a diabetic at the end of his life, but he was so disciplined. I mean, if it was 1 minute past the time that he was supposed to eat something, you'd find him, buried in the refrigerator grabbing something to eat. But he was just an absolutely wonderful person. And if you could emulate his qualities of, kind of being a Renaissance person, give to your, the things that we've talked about, give to your family, give to your community, give to your business, help others, lift them up, then I think that Dave would certainly be an example that other people could aspire to. And certainly there are things in the MDRT logs that they can probably find on Dave Hilton. He was just a wonderful, wonderful man.
Mm-hmm. So you got a chance to know Mr. Hilton Senior, correct? Because there's David Hilton Jr. When I was coming up, he was kind of the guy that everybody was like, yeah. But there was Senior, who, if we go back and look at time, I believe part of Granham's book actually was part of the study of that agency, and he was a part of that study. So, it's kind of all comes full circle, right? Is that the proof is in the pudding. First things first, Stephen Covey, right? And we look forward to hearing your quotes when you put them out there, and in your knowledge. Before we get to kind of wrapping up, if you were to give advice to individuals out there today, listening to you, what advice would you give advisors that will help them get through the next 15, 20 years? What advice would you give them if you're looking back saying, hey, here's what I would do because this is what's ahead of you?
Well, actually, Chris, I think I could share a quote with you that maybe kind of sums it up. And it actually came from a presentation that I heard Dave Hilton give.
Awesome.
And the quote was this: you sow a thought and it reaps an act. You sow an act and it reaps a habit. You sow a habit and it reaps a character. And you sow a character and it reaps a destiny. And I think that in all of our lives and over the next 10 or 15 years, for all of the things that we can face, from changing products, compliance, regulation, taxation, and my God, we've had lots of changes in taxation from 1913 till now when the income tax was generated. If we believe that whatever we think about, that we turn into an action that becomes a habit, the discipline to develop the character, then our destiny is shaped by that. That the future is not something that just kind of happens to us the next 15 or 20 years. The future is something we can create. That's not my original thought. That comes from other people too. The future is not something that just arrives. The future is something that we can create. And it's created by doing the thinking, the acting, the habit formation, the character development. And then you have, both personally and business-wise, a destiny that I think you can be proud of. Destiny comes from the same word as destination. Well, where are we going? That's your destiny. It's not fate. It's not something that's out of our control. It's very much in our control because we can create the future, but we have to have that discipline. And I think a lot of that discipline comes from being committed and participating with your colleagues to make sure that good things happen. Because in the absence of good people doing good things, bad things happen. And the only way we can get away from those is by people being involved and committed.
Last thing before we get to the speed round, can you just give 2 seconds on what's NAIFA meant in your life and in your career?
Well, NAIFA has meant a tremendous amount to me because it was back then when I first started, you actually had to be a member of NAIFA to be a member of MDRT.
MDRT, right? That's right.
So when I was still wet behind the ears in the business, my first contact with industry participation was NAIFA. I was a member of the DuPage County, Illinois, National Association of Life Underwriters. And I liked being there. I liked hearing things that I hadn't heard before, whether it was a speech that was meant to be inspiring or it was an educational presentation on a product or how to handle a marketplace. So that kind of motivated me. I wouldn't miss one of those meetings. Then I volunteered for that board, and then I was president of the DuPage County Association in 1985. After serving there, I always had an interest in legislation. So when people asked for help with the Illinois Assembly, I volunteered to do that, and it taught me all sorts of things about the legislative process and how the committees worked and how a bill moves through the assembly. And then, rubbing shoulders with people like Dave Woods, who was a president of NAIFA, who wound up founding Life Happens, the Life and Health Insurance Foundation for Education. all throughout my career, there have been touches with NAIFA, even when I was doing work with the Society or the $1 Million Roundtable. We were inextricably interwoven. We had different perspectives on the business because that's why the associations were developed. Productivity and ethics, advanced underwriting, the political representation nationally and at state level. And I had an opportunity to see the power of NAIFA. And to this day, I think it's probably true that there's no other organization who has a member, a financial professional, and a citizen in every district in the United States from a grassroots standpoint. We're powerful, powerful people. So that had great attraction for me, and it taught me a lot. So NAIFA has been, like I say, inextricably interwoven in just about all I have done, probably from, like the early 70s, 1971, 72, over 51 years.
Awesome. Well, we could continue to talk to you probably for the next 2 hours. We understand you're super busy. Thank you so much for all you do, giving back, being a part of the organization, any association, the path in which you've paved so that younger professionals can go down that path and mimic some of the commitments and the behaviors that you guys have put forth. Like yourself, we're honored to be in your presence, and we can learn so much from you going forward. I'm going to move to the speed round, if you're good with that, which I know we didn't give you the questions, but I'm going to give them to you. And what it is, Brian, right off the top of your head, just tell me what comes to mind. This is always fun because it gives people kind of an opportunity to kind of see kind of your fun character, kind of that type of thing. And so we'll have some fun with this because I know you're a Chicago guy. So we'll have a little bit of fun with this. You ready?
Okay.
Cubs or White Sox?
White Sox.
White Sox.
I used to be an green usher at Comiskey Park. So.
Oh, wow. Favorite Chicago athlete of all time?
Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan. Okay, got it. Favorite public speaker?
Favorite public speaker? Ronald Reagan, probably.
Oh, wow. Okay. Ronald Reagan. All right. And finally, but not least, favorite type of pizza?
Sausage.
So, okay, spin on that. Deep dish or Chicago style? Or thin crust?
I think thin crust. The deep dish is just a little bit too much for me. I tell people I've entered the furniture stage of my life because my chest is slipping into my drawers. So the deep dish
Thank you, Brian. It's a joy to spend time with you. Hopefully we see you at NLC. If we don't see you at NLC, we will go and we will represent on the stairs of Washington all the work that you guys have done that have paved the way for us to continue to do advocacy and bring the industry together for the better of serving people. So thank you so much. Any parting words, Mr. Brian?
Well, I would just thank you, Dan, for all of the effort to put these programs together, because I think it's important in this day and age of digital presence, and certainly over the last couple of years with the pandemic, to be able to have continuing contact. We have a lonely business many times, and it's kind of nice to be able to see what other people are doing, what they have on their minds, and in some cases, what the solutions are. So kudos to you guys for doing this and for giving of all of your time and effort to help the rest of us.
Of course. Thanks for being here. Suzanne, our wonderful co-host, anything you want to leave? Any final thoughts before
I will say, if you love what you heard today, Brian Ashe has agreed to be a new featured contributor to the Advisor Today blog. So we'll get more of his insights and wisdom in just a few, probably short weeks. Thank you,
Awesome.
Brian.
Thank you, Suzanne.
All right. So as we wrap up today, we heard so much from Brian Ashe. As you heard, you can develop habits, behaviors, but he said something so interesting that I hope it sticks with you is that this path that we're going down is an absolute commitment versus just an interest. So all of you volunteer, get involved. And again, thank you for listening to the Advisor Today podcast, where we come together collectively to uplift each other, to grow our business, to advise each other, and also to pave the way for the future of those who are behind us. And that allows for us to be better by doing good. So thanks all of you. Thanks for being here, and look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks for joining us for NAIFA's Advisor Today podcast series. Make sure to subscribe to get future episodes. And if you're interested in coming on the show, let us know.